Welcome to Brain Balance Live, where we come together each week to discuss building those strong connections with our neurodiverse children. And each week we go over new tools to support you at home. So I am Jessica Farmer of Farmer Loves Phonics. I'm a fellow parent and I'm a literacy advocate. And this is Heather Wells, our amazing expert from the Brain Balance Centers near you in Texas. She is a therapist, a certified cognitive specialist, and national autism speaker. Hi, Heather. How are you today?
Doing well. I'm not waiting on a hurricane like you are.
I know, it came out of nowhere.
Yeah, we're partially talking about news literacy today, so I guess that fits in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
last week we talked about bullying online and in person. And this week, this is about digital citizenship. It happens to fall on election day. So
Wow.
that I can't even pretend that I was that on top of it. I knew election because we planned these in advance. But this is about keeping your kids safe online, teaching them social emotional skills that will help them in those encounters as well as out in the real world, and how to kind of transfer those over. So and by the way, I want to start off right off the top so I don't forget to say that commonsensemedia.org is one of the best sites I have ever found on this topic. They have tons of resources for schools, teachers, parents. And if you know that your school is using that curriculum, things to do at home to really help those lessons come to light. But even without that, you go to that site, there are so many great activities. But let's go ahead and dive on into the first slide.
Sounds great.
All right. So here we're looking at kids need to know that every single thing we do online leaves a digital footprint. Talk about what that means. In fact, with little ones, because a lot of times they are more literal, you can talk about like feet are to be careful where we walk on the internet, hands or like arms we use to balance, do like a balancing activity with arms, and then talk about we balance our time. We use our legs to stand up when mean things are happening. We use our gut to tell us when maybe we need to get off the thing we're doing. If something's making us sad or mad or uncomfortable. We use our heart to be kind and respectful. That really, even a coloring page and having them color and talk about how we use those parts of our body at all ages. Kids need to know that our bodies give us signals before emotions escalate, and we need to pay attention to those signals. If kids have low body awareness, they may not feel those signals. But okay, so discuss what's personal versus private information. It's really good to give specific examples. Is it safe to share your favorite color online? Kind of go through some different things. What about your address and why? Make sure you have settings correct. You may want location tracking on your kids for your purposes, but are there location trackers on any of the apps or games they're using, and turning those off? You don't want strangers knowing where your kids are. Teach kids, and this usually happens around roughly beginning around third grade, and I'm talking about developmentally, so complex passwords, and even give examples of passwords that would be good and not good, and explain why. Like just something very basic that's their birthday or their favorite color. That's not complicated enough. Using numbers and capitals and lowercase and symbols, so that private information stays private, and talk to them about how often to change them. Maybe on a calendar app every 3 months or whatever you decide to do, have them change it, and make sure they know why. We don't just tell kids what to do. We don't want to tell them what to think. We teach them how to think. When they understand why we're doing these things, it can translate into other areas of life. Help kids identify and avoid clickbait, special offers, quizzes, or anything asking for private information. A lot of quizzes seem fun, but they are actually gathering information from you when they do that. Make sure you know what types of information apps collect and why do they collect it. Are they doing it to sell your information? Are they doing it for research? Which that can help inform decisions as well. And sometimes you can use those as long as the settings are correct. But do that with your kids, I would say, as early as possible, but having deeper conversations the older they get. And even demonstrating that, for example, if a family does an assessment at one of our centers, we send them online paperwork to fill out, and that, depending on where your where your child or teen is. Do you think it's safe for me to share this? We're not asking for social security numbers. We're only
Mhm.
asking for things that pertain to what we need to do to help this family and this student. Or even talk out loud. I know it's safe for me to fill out this form because, and talk about why, you know, um, discuss scams, phishing, telltale signs. If you get some sort of phishing email, show it to your kids as long as it doesn't have anything illicit in it or inappropriate. I know this is not legitimate because, and talk about why. Uh, One of our centers has been getting a ton of phishing emails for Facebook, but it's
Mhm.
Facebook. It's not Facebook's fault. It's people trying to get you to click on things, and how you don't click on things if you don't know who it comes from, and how to look at the email address, the grammar misspellings. Talk about how logos on any sort of fishy kinds of things might look very similar but not identical to the actual company. Photoshopped images, that kind of thing. Point those out. Explore how tech companies make money. You can do research online. How can you limit the data you share on platforms, and collaborate with your kids? Is this a game or a site we should skip, or is it something we can adjust and know that we're still safe and can enjoy what's on here? So just early on, the conversation just becomes more in depth the older kids get, and the more ready they are to grasp the deeper layers of that. Okay, so now let's move on. Were you going to say something?
I was just going to say there are adults that need that information too. I know my grandma is now on an iPhone and an iWatch and all of these things, and sometimes she receives emails and she thinks, "Oh, I didn't pay a bill," but it's a fake email. And so, just pointing out to your loved ones that might be new to technology, they might need that support too.
I'm so glad you said that. I was literally just thinking of my parents don't handle any of their things. I handle everything, but seniors are huge targets. And they will say, "We're calling from your bank," and they know just enough information for it to seem legit, but to pay attention. Social Security sends out emails regularly about scams going around to seniors, or
Mm-hmm.
you'll get an email from a bank. If you, this has been going around. This is not from us. We will never ask for XYZ.
Yeah.
Teach them to pay attention to those things. And those are good things to show kids as well. So um, now we talked about the footprint, but here's another way to really drive this point home. Before we share images of our kids online, ask them if it's okay. And maybe you don't do that on every single one, like it's the Christmas photo or something. But if it's something that is specifically really honed in on your child, ask for their permission. Are you comfortable with me sharing this? They start learning I have control over what goes out about me online. Do they have friends who do not do that? Do they know to ask their friends before they post certain pictures online? I need to ask for permission from others. I need to consider, how did they feel about this? I think it's okay, but do they? Read messages aloud using various tones of voice. So, for example, let's say they get a text, or "What are you doing?" What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Read it different ways, stressing different words with emoting different feelings, and so that they can really see how we lose the tone of voice in the written word. How do you
Mm-hmm.
think that impacts some of your interactions? And point that out in real life. I'm fine. And then you can make that connection. You told me you're fine. Do you think I believe you? Why not? And it's because of how you said it. This helps them so much pay attention to tone of voice in real life. We're also losing the nonverbals. Talk about how you can't see the facial expressions, the body language, and depending on the mood we're in, or assumptions we have, we may read in a put down that is not there, because all we have is the words. Way less than half of the message comes from words. It is how you say it, and it is the nonverbals that go along with that. Talk about how emojis and exclamation points, or different punctuation, also impact how we read things. And by the way, it would be really interesting, if you've not done this before with your tweens and teens, to pull up emojis and talk about what you think it means versus what they do. I can almost promise you that doesn't completely match. Kids have an entire emoji vernacular where a lot of those things mean something completely different from what any of us who were not raised with that would think they mean. So know what the norms are, and that would seem like an ugly face, but it's a funny one to them, and here's why. Or if you are writing a text that could be taken many different ways, how can you use punctuation or a smiley to get across the emotion? But how that doesn't erase if you can't say something rude and then smile. How all of those things go together. Help kids develop instincts about creepy or risky situations. Give them a lot of scenarios that are age appropriate. I'm going to go into a deeper dive on the next slide on this, but how would you feel and what would you do if? How would you feel if this happened? Have you ever faced that? What did you do? Would you do anything differently next time? I will get very specific on the next page.
Okay.
Search yourselves. Just get on your search engine, put in your name, put in your kids' names, do this together. Talk about, are you comfortable with what comes up? Why or why not? Why might I not want some of this information available to strangers? Empathize with pressures to overshare. This is a very important conversation, for sure by middle school, and depending on the maturity of your kids, possibly slightly before. But why do you have you ever shared something and later regretted it? Or have you ever seen a friend share something and later they regretted it? Why do you think this happens? Why do we share things? How did you feel? And get the conversation going about there is this pressure to be connected all the time. Or I was just really frustrated and that's how I vent. And maybe depending on what they're venting, maybe a journal would be another alternative. Talk about the difference between what's appropriate for online versus offline conversations, group text versus one-on-one text, and a lot of times kids are afraid of disappointing someone. And so I give an example here. It's an unfortunate example, but it happens all the time now. Let's say that you have a daughter who is tempted to take a photo of herself immodestly and because she doesn't want to disappoint her boyfriend. And what are some potential repercussions of doing that? What if y'all break up? What if he shows it to friends and before you know it's been shared with the whole school or it gets posted somewhere? How much worse would that feel than disappointing someone?
Right.
And then the deeper conversation of do you want to be in a relationship with someone who pressures you to do things you're not comfortable with? It leads to all kinds of things. I talked about learning the norms because some things on the surface, we may not know that we all know what it was like to be kids. We do not know what it was like to be kids in this age.
Right.
And so are there some things that we might misinterpret? Have a conversation without accusation, but then make sure they know where the lines are. Maybe that emoji means something different, but hate speech is never okay. That kind of thing. Right. Or indecent photos or violence or scroll through social media. You could do this with maybe their favorite sports star or somebody, Hollywood kind of person. You could do it. The reason I say that is because you don't want to do anything that sounds like you're coming down on their friends, because then they're maybe friends you don't want them hanging out with. But what kind of image are they trying to project with what they post? Do you think that's the full version of who they are? Why or why not? There's a whole conversation about, and there's a ton of pressure that teens feel and mental health that goes in with this that we'll talk about how sometimes they might compare their real lives to the version of life or the version of self that others create online.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have any friends who act one way online and then act differently in person? Why do you think that happens? But ask kids how they would like to portray themselves authentically. What are some things that get in the way of that? So this is be safe, and then also how to interact. And one of the benefits of using if we're typing something or writing something, when we talk, sometimes it just comes out. Typing forces our brains to slow down, but sometimes we still need to pause before we hit enter or hit send, Okay, let's move on. All right, so now this is broken down, social emotional learning, sort of by age category. And 5 areas to think about are self-awareness, self-management, decision-making, relationships, and social awareness. So with self-awareness, roughly around the developmental age of kindergarten to 2nd grade, it's mostly at the level of getting them to be very aware of the emotions they have when they're doing things online and in real life. And, what do you do online that makes you happy or that makes you laugh? Do you ever get mad online? What are some of those things? Teach them to pause and think about how they're feeling, and then ask for help if they need it, or ask themselves if they're developmentally appropriate, why am I feeling this way? What is making me feel uncomfortable? And then what can you do? But at that age, usually it's talk to an adult. As they get older, it could be block the person, report it if it's on an online community or something. Now, 3rd grade through 5th grade, we're building on what we've already talked about, how behaviors affect self and others. I have a responsibility to myself to stay safe and healthy. I have responsible to the people I really know, my family and friends. And then there is this huge online community. What are those responsibilities? And talk about what are some things our family values. I so highly recommend having a family meeting about digital and not digital life and talking about family values. And everybody shares what theirs are and what those words mean to them. How can these values, maybe you're talking about kindness and respect and integrity, whatever your family values are, how can we use those as anchors? How do those help inform the choices we make, online and off? Maybe I can ask myself, is this kind and respectful? And is it true? That kind of thing. By middle school, we're looking at how social media can impact emotions and behaviors. And that's really where kids start needing to think about oversharing. That's where it usually starts happening. One thing that's interesting to note is that we always hear, and it's very true, there's tons of research to back up the fact that the amount of time spent on social media is extremely related to mental health, and that too much time on social media can decrease mental health. But what we don't talk about as much is the research that shows that one's sense of well-being and their satisfaction with life also predicts higher social media use. So sometimes it goes both ways. And actually, the link between me already having some mental health struggles is going to make me be on social media more. That is a bigger correlation than what social media does to mental health. But they're both important. So we can't just talk about, oh, we need to limit screen time. Do we? Yes. And it also matters what you're doing online. We're going to look at that. It's much more about what you're doing online than it is about the time spent, although it does need to be limited. Okay. But there is very clear research showing that those who passively spend time online, in other words, they're just scrolling through social media, looking at all the fancy posts everybody makes, that photoshopped image, or look how skinny and toned I am, or I have all the friends and I'm so happy, I'm always at parties, whatever. That has a bigger impact on mental health than those who are actively engaging and using it to connect. In fact, that can improve mental health. So thinking about active versus passive, talk to your kids, especially in middle and high school. How much time am I spending just scrolling? How much time am I engaging and connecting? That is a very big telltale sign. And why do I think that is? And are there any habits I want to change based on this? Self-management at the K through 2 level. Do any of you have kids who throw a fit when you tell them it's time to put down their devices? Of course.
My 4-year-old.
Yeah. Talk to them about how do you feel when we tell you it's time to put it away? I feel mad. Well, and why is that? Because I'm not finished. Talk through those things, but teach them to transition from online to offline with pause. So when we talk to you, pause, and you're going to signal. You could even come up with like gestures and what we're going to do so I know you hear me. Breathe, take some deep breaths, common sense even recommends just stroking your hand up from your stomach to your chest and finish. And you put both hands back. Getting that body brain connection and having hand signals that go with it, it just becomes this rule that they follow. That is another routine.
That's great.
So 3 through 5, we're looking at healthy media balance. And it's not just about doing healthy things online. It is also talking about how, being online is not evil. That's the world we're in. But what you do does matter. And we never want it to interfere with time with, face-to-face time with our loved ones, or with exercise or sleep. So start talking about, how can this impact health? It's important to exercise. And if we do, so much time on social media, it cannot replace these other things, by 6 to 8, you're still having that conversation, but the brain is really ready to think about digital habits and have them talk. What do you notice about the digital habits in our family? Not just for them, so they don't feel singled out. What are some tweaks you think we can make so that we have better balance? And when you ask for their input, there's a lot more buy-in. I mean, if they think of it, it has to be a great idea. And just have certain times that are just blocked off the calendar that nobody's going to be on devices. Dinner time, family time, homework time. And of course, you can look at different blockers and settings on phones where it goes to do not disturb, or certain sites that are blocked during certain hours. I've done a show before on ones I recommend. If you want input on that, let me know. And by high school, how social media can impact not only your physical and emotional health, but I mean, not just your interfering with the things you just talked about with sleep and exercise and stuff, but also physical, emotional impact. And get them looking for patterns. What are things you do on there that make you feel good? And why is that? What is your gut telling you? Talk to them about active versus passive uses. That so many people don't even think about that. I don't think that's one of those intuitive things. Decision making, K through 2, it's about staying safe. Ask a grown-up. Only talk to people you know. Stick to kid places only. Yeah. We're talking about safety. By 3 through 5, that's where you're really entering safe passwords. How do you take care of your devices? Getting permission from friends or family members before posting. Decision making for middle school, the dangers of talking to people you don't know well online. The reason we're waiting to this is that hopefully up until then, they're not talking to people they don't know online. Right. They're at kid places and in a small core group that you know who the people are. Red flags, what to do. What would be some red flags? Have you, if they don't know some red flags, you can name some. When people ask for your phone number, ask to take the conversation to a private chat room. Yes. or that kind of thing. How would you feel? What would you do? What are some body signals? Get them really paying attention to how their stomach feels, their heart. Do they sweat? Does their pulse increase? Because that comes before the conscious awareness of what's happening. 9 to 12, how posting impacts reputation and relationships. At this time, they can really start thinking about how what you post, a future potential employer could see. Getting into certain university, you're all of it matters about safety and connectedness and relationships. But what you do, one click can change whether you get a job. That is a big aha moment for kids. Mm-hmm. Relationships, K through 2, ways to be respectful and kind, why it matters. So when we talk all the time on my page, I post all the time about social emotional learning, but now just add that digital component to it. Mm-hmm. And when you're reading social emotional books, talk about what would be different about saying this online versus in person. And if they don't understand the word respect, sometimes we use these virtue words and we assume they know what they mean. And a very simple explanation at this age would be respect means to care about something. Mm-hmm. You respect the dog by making sure he has food and water, and that kind of thing. 3 through 5, how to keep interactions fun, healthy, and friendly. And so maybe they're playing a game and people start getting ugly because of competitiveness, trash talking, and it's not in good fun. And how is that? Have you ever handled anything on the playground that was similar to this? How did you How did somebody diffuse the situation? Talking about how sometimes humor works. Just make somebody laugh and it breaks the tension. Do you ask them, do you notice any difference in how people communicate when you text with this friend one-on-one in a group text? Is it different in texting versus the interactions y'all have when you're gaming online, social media? Why do you think that is? 6 through 12, the positive and negative effects of social media on friendships. What are some of the good things about social media? And maybe they're talking about it's a good way to keep up with what's happening. I get to keep in touch with my friends who moved away and don't live here anymore. That kind of thing. What are some negatives? And talking about pressures and how maybe some people are trying to just impress everybody else or be cool, and then they start not even being real. Or it's hurt some of my friendships because they act so differently in this online community than they do when we're one-on-one. They treat me totally different, because they want to get in with this group. It's just doesn't feel legit anymore. How to avoid the urge to always be connected. Yeah, there's so much pressure. You always got to be online. Do you feel pressure if somebody messages you to respond right away? Yeah, because if I don't, they're going to think I'm mad at them or something. They're just going to they just start sending 6 question marks and exclamation points. Well, what can we do to handle that? Well, maybe I just let them know that during homework time, my phone is on do not disturb and I don't respond to messages. Or sometimes I need to, I just sort of need to step away. I kind of need to just have a little break and talk, just talk through so that they really have a game plan. Social awareness, responding to meanness. It's good to call it meanness if we're talking about bullying behaviors K through 2. By 3 through 5, they're ready to hear about bullying and cyberbullying. I talked about the Zach Stands Up series last week on the bullying. In that, they use this acronym STOP, STOP, with S means step away. T means tell an adult, make sure your kids know who those adults are, not just you. You do want to be number one, but if it's at school, who are their go-to people that they trust and feel comfortable with? O stands for okay sites only, and P means to pause and think. And as they get older, do I need to block them? Do I need to report it? Do I just need to ignore it? And maybe that takes the fun away and they stop doing it and then we can go on with our lives. By grade 6 to 8, digital drama. Why do you think digital drama happens? You can even bring in that tone of voice thing. Sometimes people misinterpret what somebody meant because, they're just saying, what are you doing? They were interested and they're like, what are you doing? They took it as accusatory. They got defensive and then everything blew up. Maybe it's the fake or cool factor, trying to impress people. Talk through all the reasons it happens. Have you faced anything like that? What did you try? Did it work? Anything you want to try next time? And role play, ways to de-escalate. And sometimes when you just need to step away. I did not share the cyberbullying slide in this week's presentation because I did it last week. But if you want a lot more detail on that, just check out last week. And then in grades 9 to 12, really taking it next level and talking about hate speech. And when somebody is slurs and things are thrown at people because of who they are, skin color, religion, orientation towards any certain beliefs, talk about that, why it happens and how to combat it. So I just wanted to break it down. I don't usually have this much writing on one slide, but I thought this might be helpful if you have kids at different stages.
Definitely.
But it's always good to connect these lessons to things you're already talking about in real life. And it's there's research, by the way, that shows that when the TV is on in the background, just as a habit, it's just on as background noise, that there is less connection in the family. It is such a distraction. And if your kids are watching, when can an adult sit down and watch it with them, sing the songs with them, or pull in a book to connect the concept they're learning with the thing that's on that show? That really generalizes knowledge and you're still getting connection time instead of it just being a babysitter all the time, that kind of thing. Okay, let's move on. I mentioned this, but I thought this deserved to slide into itself. Higher psychological stress and lower life satisfaction predict higher social media use, even a year later. And increased social media use predicts decreased well-being. especially if it's passive. So how you use the internet is more crucial than how long you use it. And instead of thinking that the device is the issue, which it is part of the issue a lot of times. Why is my child so addicted to this in the first place? What is missing? What are they escaping? Are they anxious, etc.? So sometimes we get the cart before the horse. We have to know the root cause of what's happening. And so I know I already said that, but I'm like, this is an important point because people don't talk about how mental health struggles predict more time on social media. And wow. It goes both ways. All right. So now we're going to look at the how, and we're going to look at frivolous screen time on the next slide. Oh, no, we're not. It's on the one after this. One other talking point, this is so prevalent, is helping teens and tweens spot fake news and to decode media messages, conspiracy theories. You are growing critical thinking when you work on this. And a lot of kids will really enjoy this lesson because they get to be online with you. And then applying those lessons, how can you use the same kind of critical thinking in real life? So use real life examples to grow understanding of how people can view the same situation with different perspectives. Sibling arguments could be a great example of this. If your kids have had an argument and they both kind of tell the same story, but in this case it's one's fault, in the other case it's his fault, and they've decoded differently why it happened. Use as the exact, y'all both experienced the same thing, right? How is it that your sister thinks that this is why it happened and you think this is why it happened? You're really giving a concrete example for them to think about how two people can view the same news, the same situation, and have completely different viewpoints on it. It's very important for kids to understand the difference between fact and opinion. And when they're younger, you could make a statement and say, is that a fact or an opinion? Like rocks sink in water. Or this election season is crazy. Is that a fact or an opinion? Robert Randall won the city councilman thing. Is that fact or opinion? That's a fact. He's going to be a good councilman. Is that a fact or an opinion? And talk about how people come up with their opinions, understanding that and how do facts and opinions go together? We have our family values, we have our personalities, we have our life experiences, and how then we can find some facts, but our experiences and our values are going to impact how we view those facts. The same people can have two facts and see it differently. Does that mean one is right and one is wrong? Yeah, the one who agrees with me is right, but helping them understand that, and sometimes there's not a right or wrong. And talk about what are some scenarios where there is a clear right and wrong, like bullying is wrong. What is an example of where there's room for opinion, or there's some shades and degrees in there? Have these conversations. You can pull up pictures. I talked about wordless picture books last year, but you could pull up any pictures and show a picture. What's happening in this picture? A boy is walking his dogs in the rain, and then ask somebody else, I think he is walking the neighbor's dogs the neighbors are washing their car and made the sidewalk really wet. Neither one of those are facts. Those are inferences. We are guessing about what happened. They need to understand the difference between inferencing with little ones. Just use the word guess. And a lot of kids will really open up when you ask them to guess what's happening in the picture, because there's no right or wrong to a guess. So if you have kids who shut down and they're afraid they're going to get the wrong answer, they won't. There is no right or wrong. What do you think? Let's just make a guess. My guess is this. How can we both look at the same picture? But we don't know the truth. Are there ever times we read things online and we don't know if they're true or not? Yeah. That kind of thing. And then encourage healthy skepticism. Healthy skepticism. A lot of kids are sort of all or nothing. If they struggle with cognitive flexibility, everything's right or wrong, or black or white, or good or bad. Skeptic, I'm not supposed to believe anything. Now we're going too far the other way. Help them analyze messages and question the purpose of the words and images. You are going to help your kids so much. Social, emotional skills, academically. One of the skills they need is to understand the author's purpose. Right. Is this author writing to inform us, to entertain us? It's fiction. It's to make us laugh. Is it fiction, but it's to teach us a lesson? There's a moral to the story. That I also learned how to understand the purpose of my friend told me this. I thought he was putting me down. He's actually just trying to make me aware so I can prepare myself. What are different ways to interpret purpose? And teach kids about fact-checking tools like Snopes or factcheck.org. If you have favorites that you use, show them. And this is why I like this one. Play spot the ad. This can be when you're driving and there's a billboard. It can be commercials on TV. It can be online. Help them figure out what, sometimes ads are super apparent. People are smiling. They have toothpaste on their toothbrush. They're advertising toothpaste. But there are so many that aren't obvious. Why do you think sometimes ads are sneaky like that? They don't just tell you what they're selling. Have them figure out what unapparent ads are selling. Help them explore how pictures, sounds, and words are used to sell products. There are a lot of beer commercials that have people in bikinis and everybody's laughing and jumping in the sand. And so your kids might think that if I drink beer, that's what my life is going to look like.
Right.
And talk about reality versus the fiction of that. Why do you think they use those kinds of images? When I was little, I mean, like a toddler, every time I would have tea, I would finish a drink. I actually am thirsty, so that's. And I'd say good to the last drop. And every time. That is the power of these. I didn't have sight at the time, but I could hear that, and that stuck with me. And think about that too. If you have kids with sensory processing struggles, certain types of sensory stimuli might be more powerful to them because that's compensating for something they're struggling with. Those images might be more powerful because they struggle with auditory processing, for example. Mm-hmm. And of course, the ad thing goes also with the apps and games. This is why we adjust settings, because they try to sell our information. Are there apps where there's going to be pop-ups with things you don't want your kids to see? What other companies are they associated with? Sharing. What kind of info do you like to share online? Now, we've already talked about personal oversharing, but this is about, maybe it's a news article, if we're talking about teens, or something about, there's been a lot of big news stories this year. And why do you like to and show interest? How you say it matters, not why do you want to share that kind of stuff? Oh, what has you interested in that you want to share it with others? Do you ensure it's true beforehand? And it can't be because my BFF Katie shared it. Have you ever shared something and later found out it wasn't true? And really, how could that possibly make people not trust you, even though you didn't purposely mislead them? They need to understand that it's not always about purposeful lies. Other things that can impact how our integrity is viewed. We have a responsibility to not spread false information. Right. And how do emotions factor into these decisions? Everybody was interested in this topic, and I wanted to be popular and cool. I thought I'd get attention, is one thing. I am passionate about this. Find out why they're passionate about it. That might give you a huge hot button that you need, that's really good or troubling to know about your kids. Yeah. Let's say, use a variety of sources. Explain how you choose your sources. Show them what your sources are if they're kid appropriate, and determine if something is credible and balanced. Sometimes, you can talk about how there are editorials, and a lot of times an opinion piece will say that it's an opinion piece. Right. Whereas this is a research study conducted on these participants. That is just reporting exactly what happened in this study. Mm-hmm. But is one study enough? Talk about why you need a wide variety of sources, and you don't want all your information on. What are some other ways to get information besides just, and why it's important to have more than one? Talk about biases. If I just go to one site, they might skew the information they share because this is what they believe, and it's fine that they believe that, but I also want to know the other side of the issue. And by the way, another good way to make this point come home is, like, if you're in the park on Saturday playing with your kids and you see an argument, talk about what do you think is happening, and get the conversation going where we don't know the backstory to that. It could look like one is being ugly to the other. That might be an emotional response to something that happened that we don't know about. Could that happen online? Sometimes there could be a backstory that we don't know about. And when you want to step in when it's bullying versus you don't engage in something that's not your business.
Yeah.
You could even, if you're reading a chapter book with your kids, okay, and it's a brand new book, chapter 4. Wait, we can't start at chapter 4. Why not? We got it. We don't know. We won't even know what's happening. We got to know what happened in the first 3 chapters. That's a really good way to bring that point home. Yeah, we don't know all the chapters of these individuals' lives. Even a snapshot in time does not tell us who somebody is. Somebody may have gotten fired from their job and then be rude to you at the grocery store. That doesn't mean they're a rude person. That kind of thing. Okay, let's move on. Now, this is the slide. Frivolous screen time. I underlined frivolous because not all screen time is created equally.
Right.
But frivolous screen time is associated with dysregulation, conduct disorders, anxiety, depression, drug use, developmental issues. And this is at the early ages. I mean, by at least 24 months old, there are developmental lags associated with screen use. In fact, birth to 2, the only screen use that really is supposed to happen is if you're FaceTiming grandpa, things like that really involve engagement. Fine motor, especially if you use touch screens, visual perception and fine motor skills are behind in this generation, largely because of this. And spatial relationship skills. That's kind of like really thinking with your eyes and understanding relationships of things. We use that in order to use a planner to navigate. Navigation skills have gone down because GPS is on our phone and we don't have to use our brains. Spatial relationships are involved in math, spelling, reading, writing, and so on. But look for the 4 C's. If this activity involves critical thinking, maybe they're looking at ethical dilemmas, a story about growth through trials. Common Sense has so many resources that give you, these are good shows, these are good games, these are high quality things. Context, how activities fit into the real world. Are they doing research to become better at a hobby? Are they researching because this is their first year to get to vote? They want to find information that is connected to the real world. Are they spending time with friends? Connection to loved ones or to personal meaning? Creativity. Does it help your kids' creativity grow? A couple of weeks ago, some of the information I shared in my weekly newsletter was about why creativity matters. It is not just about artistic ability. Creativity is required for problem solving, especially in today's world. I tried to solve this way. That didn't work. What's another way around it? A lot of times if kids don't have creative thinking, I tried one way, I can't do it, I give up. And you see opting out, task avoidance. Or there's only one way to look at this person. Creativity helps me have point of view. It is so important. But those are the 4 C's: critical thinking, context, connection, and creativity. I don't know what. I think I just repeated myself. Now, from the start, if a new device enters the home, this is good to think about with the holiday season rolling in. Establish rules before any lines have been crossed. Establish rules at the start when emotions are neutral. Who may use which device, when, where, and for what purposes? And talk about why this is the rule. And that way, and we all follow these rules, but you might have different rules based on what your roles in the family are. And I need this for work, and this one doesn't. I'm doing research papers, and this child isn't. But
Right.
And talk about the difference between sameness and fairness, that kind of thing. But if you do it when they are abusing the privilege, they are heightened. The guard dog of the brain takes over, and what you're saying will not resonate, and you're the bad guy. Or calling them bad. We do not want to say, I'm going to trust you with this device until you prove you can't be trusted. We are setting them up for failure. It is this shiny object. Plus, if I break the rule, I've planted the seed in my kid that I can't be trusted. I am untrustworthy. So don't set them up for failure. These are the parameters that we're all going to follow. Okay. Show non-judgmental, genuine interest in their favorite apps, games, and pages. Oh, you got a new app. Tell me about it. What do you like about this game? Will you show me? How do you play? You don't want to police every single thing they do, but you do want when a line is crossed. But you want to be aware of where they're spending their time, so that you can really customize these conversations. But nurture self-reflection about their habits. the way I use these devices, does that interfere with my relationships, my physical health, exercise, sleep? Do I get caught up in doomsday news? Our brains are wired for to be on the lookout for negativity, by the way. And so, because the brain wants to protect us, and it becomes this very vicious cycle that does bad things in our brain. There's a negativity bias. Do I look for patterns of that? Do I get hung up on doomsday information? I want to be informed, but once I know, do I need to watch it all day long? And that's not just on a device, that's in any way. It's interfering with my mental health. Do I feel worse about myself? Do I feel better about myself? Do I inaccurately compare myself to others? Why do I compare myself to others at all? I want to compare myself to who I was yesterday. Am I becoming a better version of myself? Yeah, that kind of thing. Okay. And I just love Dave Willis so succinctly, don't use social media to impress people, use it to impact people. Have that as a quote of the week. What does that mean to you? Ask your kids. And that can just open it. Having a quote of the week it's just this thing we're all discussing, and we value each other, and it also grows point of view and perspective. We can all hear the same quote, and it means different things to us based on the experiences we've had,
Yes, definitely. What an amazing show today. It's such an important topic, especially because social media and online activity is increased ever more. There's devices in schools, there's devices at home. So it's really important for kids to know how to use the internet properly. So what a fabulous show today. As you can see on the screen, these are all the ways that you can get in touch with your local Brain Balance Center near you. And Heather's always checking the inbox. So feel free to reach out with questions. It might even give us a topic for the next show. You never know. And make sure you sign up for the newsletter. It is full of fabulous information. Heather, you have anything to add before we say goodbye?
I do not. I just thanks everyone for your time, and I hope you have a great week and stay safe from that hurricane, girl.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Everybody have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.